Good day to everyone. My name is Alexis. Thank you for being here with us for this very interesting webinar, Coaching and Strategy for Driving Employee Engagement, with Karyn Trader-Leigh from the United States. I would like to start by doing a general checkup. I want to know if you can hear me and if you can see the screen. Can you please raise your hand to let us know that you can actually hear as well? Okay, I see one hand. Okay, seems to be working fine. Okay, so we are going to have a question section at the end. So during the presentation, if you have any questions, please write them down on the questions panel, and they will be answered at the end. So without further ado, welcome, Karyn.
Good afternoon or morning or whatever time it is, wherever you are. Delighted to be here with you. If you've had a chance to pay attention to any world news, you know that it's been quite chaotic in the United States. And so some of us are trying to get over our depression. So having said that, I would like to spend some time talking about employee engagement and from a coaching framework. And so my goal is to take a look at probably some broader ways of approaching coaching in organizations in terms of, one, having other ways to, in some ways, to market it, but most specifically to really understand the connection between coaching and employee engagement, and to some extent to performance management. I won't spend as much time talking about the performance management piece because I did just do a presentation on that at the conference in Peru, and I do have that available on my website. But what I would want to make a point of is just how important I think that the performance management coaching also is inside of organizations. Okay, so let's see if I can get this, minimize this here so I can, oops. I have something blocking my, I don't know if that is showing on your screen. But...
No, we don't see it. Don't worry. We just see the presentation.
Okay, great. Okay. So I'd like us to talk about what employee engagement is and what the relationship is to culture, to commitment, to retention, and as I spoke, to performance. And one of the things I think that's also important about that today, and I will touch on that briefly as we go through it, is that with the millennial generation, the younger generation, I think the employee engagement piece is really important, given the kinds of involvement that the millennials really want from their supervisors, the kind of satisfaction that they want from their work, and their kinds of expectations and values. I think those kinds of things make the issue of employee engagement really important and really compelling. And if employee engagement is compelling, coaching is compelling. I want to also emphasize the notion of being employee-centric today. I often have the feeling with many organizations that while they talk a good game about how focused they are on employees, that I don't often feel that that is as true as the ways that we talk about it. And so employee engagement for me is one of those kinds of strategies that really can go a long way to creating an employee-centric culture. You know, for so long, everything is all about shareholder value. And even when we talk about employee engagement, it's always about, and it must be certainly about outcomes. But when we're talking the coaching piece and we're talking engagement, we are talking about being an employee-centric culture. So the third piece, which I, sort of touched on a little bit as I was opening up, and that is the notion of broadening the coaching consulting perspective. And by that, I mean thinking about yourself when you go in, when you are trying to talk to leaders about buying coaching, or talking to the HR person about coaching, or talking to an employee who is inside of an organization, and the organization is going to be one that's going to pay for their coaching services, is to think about it in a much more consultative kind of a way. Not just, I feel sometimes like we're instrumental and transactional in the way that we talk about the coaching, or that we talk about it in a way that the benefit it's more, in some ways, it is more, the benefit is even greater than what the individual gets. It's coaching, consulting to the system and consulting to the culture to get, in terms of getting them to see that the broader benefit. And I think that, again, is a perspective that in the employee engagement framework provides with coaching as a development and talent management strategy. Let's see here. Okay, so what is employee engagement? Wait, I think I just went 2 slides here. I have all these little things on my screen here. Sorry about that. So employee engagement is, for me, an emotional state where we feel passion, we're energetic, and we're committed to our work. It is about being really fully invested. So head, heart, hands, mind. It's that passionate piece. It's really being connected to the work. And so in a few moments, I will talk about all the ways in which we are often not connected to the work, or very disconnected, and that there are organizations that have employee engagement problems. From an HR perspective, when HR organizations or HR leaders are talking about the employee engagement, they're looking at this from the standpoint of what are the kinds of behaviors that reflect that an employee is engaged. It is about their commitment and their belief in the organization and what the organization is doing. It is about making things work, and the desire to make things work, and it's about understanding the business of the organization. So in that respect, it is really an alignment process. Okay, so what drives employee engagement? So let's see, let me get to my next screen here. The strongest desire, I think, or the strongest driver is really that sense of being valued and being involved, as opposed to being disengaged. And involvement is not just the involvement in my specific work and what's on my desktop or on my screen or my role, but it is involvement in decision making. It's the extent to which I'm able to voice my ideas and that they feel welcome. It is that I have a voice, that I am truly a stakeholder in the organization, in my department, in the work that I do. And that I see that my contributions are welcome, have the opportunity, that I have an opportunity to develop in my role or in my job. It may not necessarily always mean a promotion, but that I do have the opportunity to develop. So, you know, for me, it would also be being in an environment that is also learning centric, that there is a mindset about continuous learning and the opportunities to do that there is robust peer learning. And lastly, I would say in many respects, and I think this when I use the terms employee-centric, that it's a healthy organization, that the organization is concerned about the health and well-being, the mental health, the general health and well-being of the employee. So I know I have certainly been in organizations where that is not the case. But when I think about this in its most robust sense, that's what I'm thinking about in terms of what drives employee engagement. So what are the building blocks of that? Okay, the building blocks of that, of course, have a lot to do with the leadership and with the supervisors, as well as with the kind of culture. Um, it requires, of course, good leadership. It requires two-way communication, which is certainly more than transactional communication. That the communication means there's understanding, that I'm clear about what's expected of me, that that development is a focus, and that I have a leader or a supervisor or my first line manager is one that has a development focus. That my company has a development focus, that they put money into that they invest, that they see employees as an investment, and that their learning and their development is an investment in the work. I've already touched on the well-being piece. And I think, of course, from an HR standpoint as well as an organizational standpoint, it certainly requires that there is some sort of talent management strategy or a human capital strategy that has policies and practices that support employee engagement, which push managers to be to be committed to this, and to have the and to train them in the kinds of behaviors that would reflect an employee engagement, and reflect that they understand what it means, and to have a responsibility for also developing their employees. So moving forward. So this is just a broader slide here that just drills down a little further and a little broader about elements that drive employee engagement. And so the core categories, you could read the pieces yourself there, but certainly having meaningful work is a component. We don't always have the luxury of having meaningful work, but certainly when one feels engaged in what one does, that meaningful work, it has some value to the organization or to whoever this goes to, and I feel like I'm doing and contributing to something that's valuable. That there's hands-on management. And the kinds of things that I just talked about in terms of the role of the leader and the kind of culture that invests in management development. There's a positive work environment, that it is not a toxic work environment, that people pay attention to the culture, and that it's a humanistic place to work. That it is certainly in the U.S. parlance, inclusive, diverse work environment. That there are growth opportunities, and that we trust that people feel a trust for leadership as opposed to a significant distrust in leadership. And so there are lots of things that go along with that, certainly around leaders that are inspiring, that they're transparent, and that they're honest. And so no one likes to be in environments where you feel like someone's playing games, that all of the information that moves around is based on gossip, and you're never really sure where you stand. And you feel like your boss is mostly more interested in his advancement, and you're just a tool to the leader. That is the antithesis of an engaged environment. So this also suggests that from a leadership standpoint, that that there is, sorry if you can hear the ringing there in the background, I'll try to mute that, that there is support for employee growth, and support for employee growth includes, we've already said development, but the other elements of that have to do with recognition and constantly getting feedback. And as we know, in many organizations, the only feedback people get is when they get a performance appraisal, if they get a performance appraisal. And often the feedback people get is when they're doing something wrong. not getting ongoing, continuous engagement and development. That there is, that the leader has a style of leadership in which they have they connect interpersonally, they have a genuine concern and care for people, and that they're respectful. And then, of course, that there's some sort of monitoring and guiding, and I've already touched on the piece about expectations and clear goals. So, I'm jumping ahead there. So I'm going to shift a little bit and talk a little bit about what's the state of employee engagement, and share a couple of slides here that come from some research around employee engagement, and chat about that a bit. There are a number, I think, of global firms, both here and in Europe, that do some pretty good research on looking at employee engagement. And Towers Perrin, which is one U.S. consulting firm, which also works internationally, in a survey which was done in the United States, where they surveyed about 35,000 U.S. workers. What the findings showed was that only 1/5 of workers characterized themselves as highly engaged in their jobs. Okay, and so their research, as well as research of other organizations, have found that there is a correlation between engagement and retention. And some of us may know that just from our personal life experience. Of when you're in an organization and you don't really feel engaged, you often have your resume ready to go. Okay. Another story, in fact, another consultant survey found also, in fact, that 85% of people who were engaged, if those who do indicate they're engaged, they tend to have higher retention and indicate that they plan to stay with the employer. So, I think that that's important and significant to recognize. Now, I will comment, when economies are bad, of course, people aren't jumping up and running away, and they will stay and suffer in place. But the moment that recessions are over or the economy picks up, if they do not feel engaged, then they will be looking to leave. So having an environment that constantly works on these sorts of things is important so that you don't have people feeling like this particular screen about their work and about the culture that they work in. So this slide is breaking down employees into three sort of broad categories in terms of engagement. There are those who are engaged, they're passionate, they feel a connection, they're plugged in, they know what's going on, they feel like they're contributors and that contribution is valued, and they feel like they're making a difference in helping the organization move forward. Then there are those who feel that they are not engaged, they are checked out, and sort of they're there, but they don't feel any passion about their work. They're probably watching the clock, doing the minimum that they have to do to get by, and collecting their paycheck. Or maybe, in fact, they're angry and really quite stressed because they're not engaged, and for all of the reasons that may be contributing to that lack of engagement. Then there are also a category that are actively disengaged. They are really unhappy at work, and their unhappiness probably shows up significantly in absenteeism, shows up with their attitudes toward their coworkers, and in fact, they may be an obstacle to other people getting work done. So you can see from that it is important for environments to have more highly engaged employees. So this just makes the point about those three categories. And when people are engaged, they're committed, and innovation occurs. There's retention, there's resilience, and as you can see, when they're actively disengaged, you're going to have poor performance. You'll be managing performance problems as a supervisor or leader. That will be sucking up a lot of your time. And from an HR standpoint, you'll be dealing with grievances and an angry employee and someone who is resistant. So that is not a happy place to be if you're the employee, if you're the supervisor, or if you're the HR manager that has that organization. I already commented on, this economy piece, and so I don't really probably need to say that again. But, if you're in an environment that whether it's a recession or not and people have mobility, it's really important to focus on helping people with their careers and with their development in terms of what is meaningful to them. So this slide looks at what makes an employee highly engaged. So these would be some of the factors that for those folks who feel engaged, these are the sort of things that are happening for them. And then, of course, the converse is true. If they don't have these factors, or if their scores are low in these factors, if you did an employee survey, and as this shows, some of the results of and percentages for people who are in where engagement is low. So for someone for whom engagement is high, someone has had conversation with them about their progress. They feel encouraged around development. Maybe they've been praised. They've had an opportunity to learn and grow. And so you can see that the scores for individuals who have that feeling about engagement or on the high engagement side are in the high 80s and through the 90s when those kinds of factors are occurring in the organization and in their work life. And conversely, you can see this is showing percentages of employees who reported that this isn't happening for them like that. This also talks about having colleagues at work, that's an important aspect, that they have a sense that their manager cares about them, and that there's a view that the job and the work is important. Their opinions count. So you can see, I don't necessarily need to read them to you, but you see where these scores are in the 90s, how valued they feel about their work and their relationship with their manager. And that to me also says something about those of us who are coaching leaders, the need to coach them around how they interact with their subordinates, to have highly engaged employees and to have employees who feel valued at work. So I think there's a lot of instructive data around these factors with respect to some of the things that managers and leaders often need coaching on. Okay, needless to say, I think I've already said this, and that's what that right column says, that when that boss or that supervisor does not have that relationship, does not have that connection, does not evidence interest in their employees, then they're missing it on terms of the kinds of competencies that they need as a leader to support an environment where employees feel engaged. And so I think those are very important competencies. Okay, so slightly different here. I'm using just a little case study to sort of further elucidate the problem of managerial attitudes around that may have an impact on engagement. And sometimes just the lack of awareness that I think leaders and managers often have, where they often think and believe that they're behaving in ways that they're employees feel engaged, and they often don't really have a clue about how they're being perceived and how their employees experience their leadership when it comes to creating a highly engaged environment where they feel they are being developed and that they have the support that they need. In this instance, there was a study done in Germany, and it was reported in a German newspaper, and it was examining the employee engagement problem. And what it found, of course, was this was done by Gallup. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Gallup organization, but it's another U.S. organization that works globally and has, some excellent tools and assessment instruments for use in coaching, and it does excellent global surveys, certainly around employee engagement as well as other leadership issues. And what they found when they did their German study was that employees reported that only 16% of German workers felt engaged. 84% of German employees felt either not engaged or actively disengaged. 48% of disengaged workers considered quitting because of their manager. And so essentially, back it up. The study found that it suggested that German managers needed a different attitude toward managing. And perhaps when we open the microphone up, I'd be very interested in hearing if anyone who has had experience in coaching or working in Germany, what your response or take is on the findings of this Gallup study. So essentially what this said is German managers think they're doing well. A business newspaper, Handelsblatt, in a survey in 2014 reported that managers felt that they're capable and accepted by their employees. Many of them did not see the need for change. Okay, and often, and certainly this happens in the United States, that many people, they're excellent technically, and it's their technical skills that get them promoted, but they don't really have the managerial skills that they need for managing. They have been moved by the organization often into leadership roles, whether they have the capability and aptitude for people management or not. Okay, so that is what I meant by saying they were often promoted for their technical prowess. So, that case makes the point about that, I think that there are organizations where people suffer from the illusion that they are doing better than they actually are, when in fact employees are very dissatisfied or not getting all that they think they should be getting from their environment. And sometimes it's the culture, and sometimes it's the leadership. So what I am suggesting here in terms of moving into the coaching piece of that is that the coach approach suggests certainly that all organizations need to invest in frontline supervisors and managers, both in terms of coaching them, but also I'm saying that leaders, line leaders, managers, frontline executives, that they also need a coaching leadership style, that coaching should be a part of the leadership style. Now, I am not suggesting that they should be competing with us and going and getting certified as a coach. That's not the suggestion. But what I am suggesting is that there is an aspect of coaching that is a leadership style, because that leader is that sort of where the rubber meets the road in terms of ongoing development opportunities, and has a perspective of what that individual's performance is and what it needs to be. And so if they have the competencies and the skills that and the awareness and willingness to lead in that kind of a way, that is vital in terms of creating the kind of engagement culture that is supportive of developing talent and that matters to certainly to all people as well as this new generation. So the best leaders grow people. I think that's a real bottom line from the standpoint of why those coaching skills in managers and as a style is so very important. And as the engagement strategy notes, is that relationship is very important, and that a leader being perceived as an engaged leader is vital. And with respect to that, both the coaching style and providing coaching support to the leaders and coaching to employees makes coaching, to me, a vital best practice in any environment that is talking about and thinking about employee engagement strategies. And so, that suggests to me, when we're talking to people about why their organization should be involved in coaching, that one of the ways that we can, it's not just the critical things about employees' growth and developing their competencies and growing their talents and helping them accomplish their goals, but it's vital in terms of the kind of climate, the culture, in terms of aligning the performance of the employee with the objectives of the organization, and therefore it is coaching as a strategy and coaching as a capability in an organization is really a very important practice that should be not seen as optional, but seen as an essential part, in my mind, of any human capital strategy. The important element, this makes the point that an important element from the employee's perspective is that it feels like someone cares about me as a person, okay? And when it feels like someone cares about me as a person, that's the kind of thing I know for me that contributes to me putting out and being inspired to motivate and going above and beyond what my job description would certainly require. So for the manager's coach, which is what I've been honing in on this section, while that sounds like a slight shift from the employee engagement piece, to me, the manager as coach is a necessary relationship for and style, as I've already said, in order to create this kind of an environment that is employee centric. It means that the organization itself has a coaching philosophy as a part of the company culture. And so really embedding coaching into organizations in an institutional kind of way. And of course, to do that, it certainly requires a buy-in from senior level management down to the frontline leader, down to the supervisor, down to the team leader. And that is to bring forward a coaching philosophy into the company culture. And that's the thing that, to me, really helps strengthen employee engagement strategies. So I said this in the beginning as I was starting out, that meeting the needs of the next generation and recognizing the kinds of things that are important to that next generation. They don't want to be micromanaged. They're extremely savvy. They want to be contributors. They want to be challenged. And the reality is many of them leave their jobs very quickly if they're not satisfied, or if they don't think that their careers are progressing or they're growing or they have a leader that is in fact interested. I'm just going to sort of zoom through that. I think it says much of what I've been saying, and that is about the coaching leadership style. This chart talks about the effectiveness, coaching effectiveness and employee engagement and commitment. And so it really begins to make that linkage or that tie. And so employees whose managers are more effective at coaching have been found to express that their employees have greater satisfaction and greater commitment. And I think that this is a really important slide for us as coaches in terms of making the case in organizations around how important coaching is inside of organizations. The the goal of coaching here is not only, and I think I've sort of said this, it's not only the satisfaction and creating that climate, but it is certainly the piece about performance and continuous and sustained improvement, and I would add even that of being an innovative environment in organization. And coaching, I think, helps create a context and a climate like that when it is widely offered. And that's one of the things that sometimes disturbs me, is that so much of coaching is preserved or reserved for very senior leaders when it is needed at all levels of an organization. So what this says is that for us, both, when, for me at least anyway, sometimes when marketing and selling coaching skills into an organization or the marketing of coaching, it is also, I like I really think of it more of in a consultative kind of a way, and also talk about it from an employee engagement as a part of their employee engagement strategy. And that, of course, depends on who you're talking to, how you might be selling the benefits of the coaching. But these benefits are things certainly we're all well versed in as coaches, in terms of all of the things that it does for growth and development. And of course, it is equally important to talk about it as a benefit of to the organization around performance management and around talent development. Not just around the benefit for the individual employee, but from a systemic and institutional perspective, the benefits of coaching. And I think these other things that are here are the things that you probably use and talk about and understand deeply in terms of how coaching benefits employees and helps contribute to that employee engagement environment. So in terms of engagement steps, coaching as engagement, it is linking, if you're internal in an organization as a coach, it's linking engagement efforts and employee satisfaction and linking high performance, as well as one of the ways of positioning coaching to be more broadly utilized inside of an organization. It is building that employee-centric culture. I think coaching is just a vital tool for that. Developing coaching in this kind of an engagement strategy says that you develop and communicating what the performance standards are. You're creating a motivational climate. And I really honed in on this whole issue of coaching leadership as a leadership style. Which says promoting the kinds of behaviors, doing the kind of training of supervisors and leaders that will foster that. And again, driving it down to the level of first-line leaders and not just reserving it, coaching as a capability for very senior people. Which is understandably important, but I think it needs to unfold much more broadly than it does today. And then, of course, creating feedback. I'm going to wrap this up so we can have some time to talk and ask questions, but I'm going to just touch a little bit on this performance management piece in terms of performance management coaching. In some ways, performance management coaching is slightly particularistic in that it is really a hone in and focus on performance. And that is one of the things I think that is a supervisor and leader's responsibility. As a coach, sometimes we may be called in not to do developmental coaching, but to do performance coaching. But I also think that this is another reason why leaders need coaching skills. The environment we're in today, a VUCA environment, which is a VUCA environment. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous for all kinds of reasons. That affect the way business gets done. Today all of a sudden in businesses have a lot of uncertainty just because the president is changing in the United States and we're going to get one with a completely different mindset. So those things, which may seem in the political domain, suddenly end up having a dramatic impact on business culture and on business orientation. So performance management becomes another kind of a way to think about the role of coaching in an organization and the kinds of skills that leaders and managers need from a coaching framework. And for me, those become other kinds of services and ways of marketing coaching and of supporting organizations in having robust coaching practices within the organization. This last, and I hope this doesn't quite sound disjointed because I sort of threw in a little bit on the performance management aspect of the coaching, and partly just to say that as we think about coaching, I think we need more to think about more agile coaching models. And so, I've been breaking it out in terms of this notion about employee coaching for engagement and coaching for performance, because I think there are specific kinds of applications and more ways for us to make the case around in organizations around how important coaching is. And one of the reasons I've been really sort of focusing on this in terms of growing the coaching business is partly because, I'm in the Washington, D.C. area, and I tell you, there are thousands of coaches here. I mean, we probably have the largest coaching the largest number of coaches in any given city is probably here in Washington, D.C., and that's because we have a large federal government and they have started using coaching with, you've got 2 million employees who work for the federal government. And so coaching needs to be used and deployed and can be deployed in a lot of other kinds of ways. And so for me, it's been thinking more about not just development and about goals, but about organizational processes and the ways of shaping organizational culture that coaching can support and facilitate. So I'm going to really sort of stop here, I think, and open up the mic because I know we're running out of time. And I'll leave it on this little last chart here that just sort of says what I've been saying, is that we've got this evolving continuing of coaching occurring. We as individual practitioners can begin to think about this more broadly, sell it more broadly, see ourselves also as coaching consultants that have a lot to bring to the table in supporting and creating these highly engaged cultures that are employee-centric. And so with that, I think I should stop and figure out how to open the mic up and see what your thoughts are, questions, or just some shared dialogue about this framework around employee engagement. Let's see, what do I need to do to open the mics here?
Okay, thank you. So please, everyone's invited. If you want to participate, make any comments, questions, if you want to speak up, just raise your hand and I'll open up your microphone so you can talk, or you can write your comments or questions in the questions panel. Let's see, let's give our participants some minutes. See, I see Patricia Jimenez has raised her hand, but Patricia, I think you had your hand risen since before. I'm not sure if you have a question right now. Can you raise your hand again if you have a question? Okay, good. So I'm opening your microphone, Patricia. But you also need to unmute your microphone, please. Just click on the microphone that you see on the screen, and it will unmute.
Okay, how about the questions could come in a written way?
We seem to have a question from Patricia, but there's no audio coming in from her. Patricia, can you write your question in the questions panel?
Anybody with their mic open that has a question or a comment or a reaction? This makes sense to me, it doesn't make sense to me, or what your experience is. Have you been involved in coaching from an engagement framework, or anybody, any comments about the comments that I made with respect to the German example, seeing that in whatever country you're in? Do you, anyone have those kinds of experiences or perceptions about the gap between the perception of supervisors, managers, leaders about how connected they are and how much they're on top of their employees' development versus what and how employees perceive that?
Okay.
I'm not sure how to interpret the silence.
Well, we have a question from Ariel. She asked,
Okay.
"How would you coach frustrated leaders?"
Okay, how would I coach frustrated leaders? Okay, so certainly that involves understanding what the source of the frustration is. And so I could imagine that sometimes a leader's frustration is that they work in an environment of low resources. They have their job, they perceive their job that they do as almost full-time in terms of the technical aspects of their job, where they don't have time, or the administrative aspects or operational aspects, that they don't have time to support their people. And they may perceive that they don't get the support and they are not getting the mentoring that they need. And so, you know, certainly a piece of that kind of coaching has to do with helping them with their assessment of what the issues are. And of those issues, what is it that they see that they could have an impact on? Even if that impact is their own attitude, or making space for how they might show up differently at work for the people that they supervise or lead. So absent knowing more about how you see that problem, but for frustrated leaders, it would be certainly getting a handle on what they see as the source of their frustration and how they also emotionally manage their own frustration so that doesn't show up and become the thing that shapes the culture for the people that support and work for them, because that mentality and mindset will show up in their attitudes and the environment, and that could help make the environment toxic, and perhaps they're not recognizing that. So I think there are become a lot of questions and queries that we could use with that manager to help them both see how they're showing up as a result of that frustration, and then looking at where the intervention opportunities are for them with their own people, as well as the managing up part. I hope that's useful.
Omar has another.
And if any, yeah.
Yes, Omar asks, what is your idea about grouping employees to work over project goals through this concept?
To work on. Okay, so for me, in terms of working on project goals, working as a team, and you know that in ICC we do provide team coaching, and team coaching I think offers a tremendous opportunity to create that kind of an environment. If you go back to some of the early slides that talk about that speak to the kind of culture where people are engaged, that where they, that includes having good relationships, that includes peer coaching. I think the concept of employee engagement in a team concept is very important, and that can having an environment where they can peer coach each other, where they can have that level of dialogue and relationship, and they can have a leader who supports and creates that kind of a culture. I think I think that's a desirable feature of a highly engaged work environment, is where you can put that in place at the team level. So it's not just for the individual and what you're doing with the individual, but it very much is also about how you manage teams and have teams that feel like they're engaged and that they're collaborative, because so much of work is collaborative today, and interdisciplinary innovation. More and more innovation comes at the interstices of different disciplines and different teams working together. So I think that's very important.
Excellent. Well, there seem to be no more questions, no more comments. Apparently, everything was ready.
Okay.
And, well, we want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank you also, Karyn. It was very, very interesting. You will all be getting this recording very soon via email. So I hope to see you soon in our upcoming webinars. And once again, Karyn, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Have a good day, everyone.